when you come to a crisis, that's when people reveal themselves to be who they truly are. And we saw that during the pandemic. The people who not only rushed to put the government in control of things, to in many ways disregard the state and federal constitutions. The Constitution doesn't have a clause for an emergency. It's there no matter what. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of people who trampled all over that, thinking, oh, it's an emergency, it's an emergency. No, that's exactly why you have a Constitution, is so that self-proclaimed emergencies don't take the day. That's what you have in dictatorships and oppressive regimes around the world. We don't have that in the United States. We should never forget that. We should never allow something like this to happen again.
I'm Dave Rubin, and joining me today is the 45th governor of the great state of Wisconsin and currently the president of Young Americans Foundation, Scott Walker. Welcome back to the Rubin Report.
Great to be back. Thanks for having me on.
I'm glad to talk to you today because we are only a few days out from these very strange midterm elections. Strange? Do you like my adjective choice there, or do you have a better one?
I do. No, I'm with you on strange. I think you're right. It's not bad. It's not good. It's just strange is a great way to say it.
What's your takeaway? I mean, everyone said this red wave was a coming. I kind of was saying it myself, but I kept saying, you can't count your chickens before they hatch and all that stuff. And obviously we still have a couple races that haven't been announced as of us taping this right now. But what's your main takeaway?
Well, a couple different things. It's not as big of a win for Republicans as many people thought, but taking the House at a minimum, if that's where we end up being, I think is a good thing, because it obviously slows the horrific and almost existential threat that we have out of Washington with the Biden administration and his lackeys there. So if for nothing else, there's at least enough votes to make someone other than Nancy Pelosi the speaker. That's a good thing to counter things. I think one of the big takeaways, though, I took out of Tuesday was that ideas matter. And that it's not enough just to say you're against Joe Biden. The polls overwhelmingly show dissatisfaction with the way Joe Biden's acting, the way they're handling the economy or not handling it. So I think, unfortunately, a lot of candidates on the right thought, well, we'll talk about how bad Biden is and we'll just run as not being Biden. And I think voters wanted more. And to prove that case, I would tell you that where there were big wins is every incumbent Republican governor in the country not only won in their re-elections, they won big and in many cases saved some of the Senate candidates. Mm-hmm. Ohio's a prime example. J.D. Vance may not have won that race if it hadn't been for Mike DeWine winning like big time. Herschel Walker might not have been in a runoff in this Georgia Senate race had Brian Kemp not win going away. And other governors, Sununu in a battleground state where unfortunately we didn't get as close as we thought. New Hampshire won big there. Kim Reynolds in Iowa. And obviously the two big ones, Ron DeSantis in Florida and Greg Abbott in Texas. I mean, the big winners on Tuesday were Republican governors in large part because they didn't just talk about Biden. They actually talked about how to lead, and they acted on it.
Were you surprised that there wasn't more anger to some of kind of the Democrat, quote-unquote, stars of the pandemic? I mean, a Gretchen Whitmer, who had some of the worst lockdowns and hypocritical moves in her personal life during it. Or, it's not like Gavin Newsom was going to lose, but, him in California. Or even Hochul in New York, who nobody voted for first time around because she obviously came in after Cuomo was taken out. But that they didn't pay any price, really.
No, I was surprised in that regard. I think particularly in Michigan, because we all still kind of hoped that was a battleground state. I think after Tuesday, not just in the governor's race, but you look at even the regent positions in the university system. I mean, it has sadly become a solidly blue state in Michigan, almost the flip side of Ohio, which used to be a battleground state and is pretty consistently Republican now. Although you look at other governors, I mean, the Democrat governor in Colorado, who I disagree with on other issues, was arguably one of the better ones when it came to the lockdowns, and he got rewarded with a huge win there. So yeah, Polis did for sure, and I think obviously the big winners Florida and Texas are good examples of people who, and I would say just governors in general, not just DeSantis and Abbott, but they were the most visible ones. And remember, detractors said, oh, people are going to die. They had a guy dressed up as a Grim Reaper on the beaches in Florida. In Beto said, oh, people are going to be dead because of Greg Abbott. No, they got their states open. They only got their economy back on track. Their kids, if you look at the scores, are doing arguably much better than kids in states that were shut down. But sadly, Michigan, New York, and California are probably now in the foreseeable future pretty solid blue states. And people there, even though the facts were right in front of them, apparently, at least in these elections, weren't willing to budge from that.
Do you miss any of the game? Obviously, two-time governor, you ran for president. Now you're doing your thing with Young Americans. But do you miss the fights? I mean, when it's election night, are you like, I should have got back in, or I should be doing this or that?
My wife was actually all excited about that. She used to hate those nights when I was a candidate. She was all excited about it. Tuesday, I'm like, who are you? What have you done to my wife? But I don't miss the campaign stuff, the election night, the nerves. Certainly when I saw some of the TV ads in Wisconsin and elsewhere across the country, I don't miss that. One of the things I always felt I would miss, and I do, are some of the people, although I'm blessed at Young America's Foundation to bump into, not only in my state, Wisconsin, but across the country, some of the same sorts of folks, and obviously being with these brave, heroic high school, college, and now middle school students who are trying to stand out on their campuses and schools as conservatives is very rewarding. I think the biggest thing I found during COVID, people said to me, oh, it must be nice not to be governor. And that was my initial reaction, but after a couple months of fools across the country, in my state and elsewhere, locking things down, as you can imagine, I just looked at it and said, we could be doing so much better. People always ask me what would I've done. I look at not only DeSantis and Abbott, but Kristi Noem is another example in South Dakota. I said, I would have put my trust in the people. Give people information, let them know what the circumstances are, but put enough faith in the American people and the people in each state to let them make the right decisions for themselves, their families, their children. Governors and for that matter, mayors and others who did that, their jurisdictions are doing far better than those that locked things down.
I don't know if you happened to see it, but there was an article a couple of weeks ago in The Atlantic about pandemic amnesty. Did you happen to catch that or see any of the firestorm around that?
I did a little bit. I didn't read the article, but I did see that.
So broadly, the idea
though, all the 2020.
Yeah, so the idea of amnesty, this idea that we should just sort of forgive everybody who did all of these, massive government overreach things, and that we let bureaucrats trample on the Constitution and all of these things. I suspect from a YAL studio, you're not really in the mood for amnesty.
No, and I think it's, as you and I know, sometimes, not only in politics, but in life in general, when you come to a crisis, that's when people reveal themselves to be who they truly are. And we saw that during the pandemic. The people who not only rushed to put the government in control of things, to in many ways disregard the state and federal constitutions. The Constitution doesn't have a clause for an emergency. It's there no matter what. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of people who trampled all over that, thinking, oh, it's an emergency, it's an emergency. No, that's exactly why you have a Constitution, is so that self-proclaimed emergencies don't take the day. That's what you have in dictatorships and oppressive regimes around the world. We don't have that in the United States. We should never forget that. We should never allow something like this to happen again. And again, if you look back, hindsight's always 20/20, but I think it's very instructive to see the governors, the mayors, the other officials who, again, put their faith in taking this seriously. I never once thought it wasn't a serious issue, but who put their faith in the people. I have one of the big takeaways, and I think you have seen this in some of the exit polling, was I think post-pandemic there is a shift. It's less about conservative and liberal, Democrat and Republican, as it was post-pandemic about blue-collar and white-collar jobs. I think a lot of people, like my brother, who's a manager at a convenience store and chain, and my sister-in-law who sells appliances for Home Depot, great, good, hardworking people, they and other blue-collar workers like them, I think became very turned off towards the heavy hand of the government, because first it was the place they worked at, and then it was their kids' schools, both of which they were upset were closed, versus sadly in the suburbs in particular, a lot of white-collar employees who were like, I don't have to commute to work. My kids can each hang out in their bedrooms, be on their computers all day in school. We spend more time together. This isn't so bad. And they were the ones that kind of bought into giving these freedoms away. I think there's going to be a long-term shift that reflects of more suburban voters, sadly, being open to government control, and more blue-collar workers and their families who are like, I don't ever want this to happen again.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop yelling, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.